This is the Volga Delta bordering the Caspian Sea in southern Russia, one of the few remaining areas of the world unspoilt by the advance of civilization. The river, on its course down to the sea, spreads out into a maze of small deep channels and open waterways at the estuary. And below, in the depths of these dark waters, lie some of the largest catfish in the world. Maddocks and Volga, already recognised as two of Great Britain's leading catfish anglers, had heard stories of enormous fish netted by commercial fishermen in these waters, and after a lengthy planning session they set off on an expedition to the area. The first leg of the journey took them from London Heathrow to Moscow. Here there was little time for sightseeing, taking in Red Square, the Kremlin and some other well-known landmarks. The second leg of the journey began in a rather informal departure lounge of a small downtown airport outside Moscow. The local buses as well as aircraft pulled up outside for the passengers, and the facilities offered to the travellers can only be described as functional. It was another 800-mile flight to Astrakhan, to yet another whistle-stop airport. Two rather dilapidated coaches, well past their prime, formed the transportation for the next leg. The roads were little better than car tracks, and it took 2 hours to reach a mooring on the River Volga. The party had been increased by Vera, a Russian schoolteacher, and her young son. Vera was to act as interpreter for the English party. On arrival, the passengers were not stirred, but badly shaken. Journey's End was a majestic houseboat that acted as a landing stage. The weary travellers disembarked and headed for the hotel, which was to be their home for the next few days. The hotel was originally the hunting lodge of Leonid Brezhnev and built in about 1963. It was little used. Of the hotel, Grigory, known in the area as the Chief, overlooked the 13th fishing expedition to the area, which comprised of a group of experienced German anglers, plus Kevin, Bob and friends. They discussed the differences in their tackle and spoke of the giant fish that had been hooked and lost by German anglers on previous visits. There were stories of lines completely stripped off reels, and of catfish in excess of 100 pounds lost in the closing stages of the fight.
Have they got the capacity on the reel? I don't know. I bet it's 90 on there.
It was with great anticipation that at dawn the following day the small armada of fishing boats set sail. Each craft is skippered by a deltaman to act as guide and to take the fishermen to the best locations.
Я подцепил, что ли?
Although anxious to get started in their hunt for the big catfish, Kevin and Bob first had to spend a little time fishing for bait. The asp, a species similar to the chub, was recommended by the guides as the best bait for catfish, and they knew the exact locations where they could be caught.
Не тише, что ли?
That's a double.
Double? Yeah. About 9. Is that alive, Simon?
Yeah.
Oh, that's no bait.
The best method for catching this fish is spinning, using small lures and spoons.
Good, lovely.
The guides take the asp and remove the best fillets for bait. These can be cut to any size or shape that may be required. For the catfish, the two anglers have chosen similar rigs comprising of 6-ounce running lead stopped by a bead and swivel, a hook link of 31-pound breaking strain to help combat the wear of the catfish's soft rows of teeth when playing them for long periods. Hooks are partridge stainless steel ranging from sizes 4/0 to 12/0. The main line is to be 26-pound breaking strain unless problems are encountered, and then the standby heavier lines will be used.
I'm fishing with blunt hooks after.
Yeah, well, I
The tranquility of the morning was disturbed by a very infrequent occurrence on the river. The commercial fishermen were on their way down to the estuary, and the size of just one group with all their equipment, floating bungalows, workboats, nets, etc., just filled the river. So Kevin's boatman Alex had to make a quick move. The time limit for commercial fishing is only 30 days in any 1 year in this area. Angling is also strictly limited.
Baby.
Later that day, Kevin caught his first Russian catfish, one that proved to be his smallest.
Very small. Baby. Yeah. One day to become a very big fish. Perfect little specimen. Isn't that lovely? We'll put him back to fight another day. Perhaps next time it's caught it'll be 100 pounds.
At the end of the first day, Kevin had the one small catfish to his credit. Bob had been unsuccessful. The next day, Kevin and Bob shared the same boat, and Bob was soon into his first fish. The fight that followed was quite lively in the fast-flowing current. His next fish, however, fell to the fillet and was not a straightforward catch. His line had become snagged midstream. Kohler, his boatman, had to reposition the craft. By using the gaff, the fish was boated. It had been decided earlier that their large specially designed landing nets would be useless for landing the bigger fish, as the strong current would make this quite impossible. After removing the hook and weighing the fish, which at 45 pounds was to be his biggest, Bob returned into the water, but not before a pleading word from Kohler, who wanted the fish for a meal. Special tackle is needed for this type of angling, and here Kevin describes it.
The rods I'm using are Shimano twin power boat rods, 7 foot 9 inches long, which is about 2.4 metres. The ones I prefer are 30-pound line class model, such as this one here. Reels, I prefer the Shimano 2000 LD multiplier, and the line is 26-pound main line. Bob's using similar tackle. The rod he's using is again the same length, 7 foot 9, but it's about 20-pound line class, so it's a slightly softer rod. And he is alternating between the multipliers that I'm using and some fixed spool reels, the Shimano 4500 bait runner, the old model, and he's using those on and off depending on the situation.
The next day, Kevin was full of confidence as Alex anchored their boat in very deep, fast water within sight of the island base. The terns were diving on the fry, which were being scattered on the surface by shoals of small marauding asp. It wasn't long before enough of these small asp had been caught for live bait. Kevin was working the baits along the river bed, seeking the big catfish that Alex said were present in the area. This session was to prove to be the turning point of the whole trip. A knock on the rod tip signalled contact, and Kevin was soon playing his first fish to fall to live bait.
I think it's only a small one, but it's the first one on a live bait, which is interesting. Only just started to use smallish light baits, well I say small racks and about 10 inches long. The current's very strong here, and it's trying to keep the rod low to keep the fish off the surface. I'll just see if I can bring it alongside the boat for Alex to lift out. Keep the rod down. Some forceps out. Good. Very good. Good. First one on a live bait. Okay, thank you. Get the gloves ready. Another smallish one, I think. Still, they're all good fun. Okay. A sudden surge of power that can pull you over a boat. Check the cut. Much power. Always pays to be ready to pick the rod up again. It's mainly the current that's the problem. They only have to turn the head and they're away again. There we are. Oh, 6 or 7. Lovely. 8 kilos perhaps, 15 pounds. It's quite a heavy fish. Hook.
Easy.
We're certainly getting some action this afternoon. We've sussed out how to catch them today. Small live raptor. So far we've put 5 raptor on, and we've had 4 catfish and lost one. The take every time. This is another smallish som, as the Russians call them. Alex is going to land it for us. One moment. A little bigger than normal. It's slapping him with its tail.
There you go.
Alex, get hold of line.
Okay, no problem.
Good. Another catfish from the Volga. Lovely colour, this one. Real good fight as well. Okay, back it goes. possible. If, yeah?
Yeah.
It's gone across the other line. This was an interesting take, this one. It's knocked the rod tip a few times, and we had to give it some line, and it knocked the rod tip a few more times. Kept teasing the bait, and then eventually it took some line, and we struck, and I don't know. Alex is asking if it's a big one, and I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah? Okay. We decided we're going to lift the anchor in case it's a good fish. I think 15 kilos. And when we struck this fish, it swam towards us, so I didn't think we had anything, but when we tightened up, it was all fireworks.
As the fight progressed, Kevin's estimate of the weight began to grow in leaps and bounds. And when the 26-pound line started to empty from his multiplier, it suddenly took a tremendous leap. Alex couldn't pull in the anchor quick enough for Kevin, who could only watch his line disappearing rapidly. Soon they were heading downstream, using the engine to catch up with this Leviathan of the Volga, which had taken over 80 metres of line in one run. In anticipation of the battle that was to follow, Alex fitted the butt pad around Kevin's waist. As the fight progressed, Alec joked with his friend who looked after the local honey boat about the size of the fish and the likelihood of it towing them out to the Caspian Sea.
We're certainly having some sport this afternoon. This is catfish number 7, and this is by far the biggest.
Almost an hour later, and with the sun beginning to set, the big fish was below the boat and tiring.
Oh, look at the bubbles coming up.
Amid lots of advice and encouragement from Alex and another returning guide, the big fish broke surface.
Oh, yeah. Oh, look at that. Over 100 pounds. Brilliant. Very good. Pardon? There we are. Well, it's too big to lift, I'm afraid. It is massive. We have to take it back to weigh it.
Alex, who estimated the fish to weigh more than 50 kilos, filled the boat's specially designed fish holding compartment with water. But before their short journey back to base, there was to be a quick visit to Alexander on his honey boat.
This kind gentleman of the Delta is going to give us some honey for as a congratulations for catching the big fish. He has many beehives here on the platform. Ah, thank you, thank you. Yeah.
The bees are towed to the Delta every summer, where they feed exclusively on the lotus flower. Back at the jetty, the fish surprised everyone when it pulled the needle of the scales around to an incredible 61 kilos, 134 English pounds.
134.
After deducting the weight of the weigh sling, Kevin returned the 7-foot, 132-pound fish to its home, one of the biggest catfish ever caught on rod and line.
Can you just try and hold the belly and the tail up to the top of the water?
Give the big
That's
sheet.
it. You don't have to lift it right up, just lift it so it's in the surface and the tail as well.
Can you get your head down?
You just... Okay.
Олег, он, наверное, уже не первый раз ловленный, так я понимаю?
That's it, lovely.
Да, первый раз.
Not quick enough.
Bye-bye.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Yeah.
At dinner that evening, there were celebratory drinks all round. The next morning, prior to a trip to the Caspian Sea, they had their first sight of a white sturgeon that had been caught by the chief. These fish abound in the Volga. The trip to the Caspian Sea gave the party a chance to see the vastness of the region that they had travelled so far to fish. gave Kevin a chance to help with the midday meal, the inevitable fish stew. On this occasion made from bream and zander. Later, moored by the Caspian Sea, the party enjoyed a relaxing day, taking in the sun and fishing from Alex's boat that had been towed along for that purpose. There was a chance to talk about tactics and methods and to discuss the possibilities of catching more of the big cats that roam these waters. Bright and early the next morning, Kohler, Bob's guide, was taking him to an area where some big catfish had been sighted. A big fish was hooked by a member of the German party, and this resulted in a broken rod. Late the next afternoon, and accompanied by a friendly cormorant, Kevin was back near the old spot where he had taken his big fish. The terns were feeding as before, and there was an ample supply of small asp for bait. As Alex toasted in champagne the previous big catch, Kevin had hooked another fish, and nothing could have prepared him for the epic battle that was to follow.
The big one, exactly the same as the other one. Straight towards the boat. This one went. Several knocks. Struck it. And then
and the slack line
Moment.
swam right to the boat. This is the kiddie. Alex is pulling the anchor up. Bitten by
At
a
first,
mosquito.
Alex could not free the anchor, which had stuck fast on the river bed.
The anchor's stuck on the bottom. Let's hope this fish doesn't come too close. Swimming towards the boat now.
After a few anxious moments, the anchor was free.
A bit worrying that, because if this fish comes much closer, it could go around the anchor rope. Good, the anchor's up. Right beneath the boat at the moment. Not so big. Maybe 20, 25.
At first, Kevin estimated the size of the fish to be small. But Alex knew, as he fitted the butt pad in place, that the fight had only just begun.
No.
Not so big. I think it's middle.
The sun was setting as the fish started to pull them downstream.
Middle?
Middle, how many kilograms middle?
25.
100 kilograms.
25 kilos. No problem here?
Both problem.
There were some very worrying moments as a boat pulling two others headed upstream towards them.
That way.
The fish, not liking the passing boat, decided to run upstream away from it.
Well, this is something.
There was no alternative but to start the motor and chase back upstream after the fish. Now the fish had found a snag, and Kevin could feel the line grating against it.
Problem.
Problem?
Yeah.
I speak. No groom, problem, big problem.
Oh. Found a snag of some sort. Probably a tree on the bottom. Okay.
Suddenly the fish was clear, but Kevin, concerned about the damage that may have been caused to his line, loosened his clutch. After what seemed an eternity, the fish was finally below the boat and still full of fight. Kevin managed to bring it to the surface, but a sudden dive against the loosened clutch resulted in a mass of tangled line on the reel. Kevin knew there was no alternative other than to boat the fish as soon as possible.
I've got a bird's nest on the reel, so we've got the catfish fish, I'm afraid. Okay. Yeah. Don't take a chance. You've got to get the fish in as quick as you can. Got a bird's nest on the reel.
It was with great relief that Alex finally gaffed the fish.
Yes? Oh. Excuse my swearing.
There is a small area of skin beneath the jaw of the catfish, and gaffing in this area causes very little damage.
Lamb. Right. £100.
Oh, hi, very good.
Many problems.
The fish was to prove larger than expected, and on the scales registered nearly 55 kilos,
About 120.
120 English pounds.
About 120 pounds.
А он уже настроен, он не стулья.
A total of over 70 catfish were caught by Kevin, Bob and the other two members of the English party. All of these fish were returned alive to the water. Kevin's 132-pound fish was the second largest to be caught on rod and line since this area of the Volga had been opened for fishing.